Good evening, everybody, and welcome to episode 4 of the V8ESC Backfire podcast. I'm Clyde Whiting, and I'm joined by my usual dodgy duo of Tony Kloosterman and Johnny Brandon. Good evening, guys.
Good evening, guys.
Evening.
And our very own silent Stig, Sam Boozin, is doing all the wizardry for us in the background. Tonight, usual layout for the show. We'll do a race review of all things that happened last night, which could go on till midnight. I'll put the guys on the spot as usual for a driver of the meeting. Our special guest tonight is the one and only Mr. Chaz Draycott. Those of you that have seen Chaz's work on videos and screen captures and things like that, hopefully Chaz is going to be giving us some of his secrets on, how he makes things look so well. We'll have a preview of the next rounds in 2 weeks from Virginia International Raceway, a track that we've never taken this series to before. A little bit of league news for you, just little discussions that we're having about next season. We haven't got much in the way of iRacing news for you tonight, but if anybody knows anything, get it on the chat and we'll get it included. Then at the end, we'll do our usual questions and answers for anybody that's put a question for us on the chat. Hopefully there's plenty of you want to know some more of Chaz's secrets, if nothing else. And then we'll wrap the show up. So, Tony and Johnny, last night, Phillip Island, a couple of tough races, fantastic track, but, it had its moments. I know I was battered from pillar to post in both races. Johnny, I know you had a bit of a bash. Tony, how did your races go?
Not that well, really. Friday, I had a shifter issue. Actually, Thursday during practice, my shifter started malfunctioning and had trouble on my upshifts. So no, it's true. I can show you the shipping information from HE sending me a new shifter. So I want to give a shout out to Husklevind. I sent them an email on Thursday night, very late. And on Friday morning, they had a new shifter shipped to me, so I'll have it on Monday, and then all my excuses will be gone. So
I have to agree with that. I had a break not long ago, and I had a video prepared for them and all sorts to try and explain what had gone on. And it was a Saturday evening. They answered my email Sunday morning, and I had a brand new pedal Tuesday morning.
Yeah,
they're
fantastic.
Document. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah. And so I had a little trouble on the upshifts, and it showed in my times, but I managed to stay out of trouble for the most part, unless you talk to Victor, and I think he's still sour over a block I threw with 1 lap to go or so. But anyways, I gave him his position back, and then had a senior moment, and I guess we're allowed those as we get older, and thought the race was over, and promptly lost another position to George McClay. So, George, you're welcome. That's your early Christmas present. There won't be any more.
I must admit, I absolutely pissed myself when I saw that, because I was behind you two. Yeah, so that's what I thought. I see Victor touched the pit wall because there was like a big shower of sparks, looked like a firework display, and then Tony started slowing down, and I thought, oh, silly old bastard, he's run out of fuel again.
No, it wasn't a fuel situation. I was just being respectful and giving the position back because he should have had it. And unfortunately, like I say, I just lost my mind for a minute.
And Johnny, your races were eventful. Anything you need to say about your races?
Race 1 was good. Good start. Got away trying to keep up with Michael Taliancic I did 9 laps without a single mistake, and I just could not change the gap. Well, I think I was 2 tenths quicker than him. He was 2 tenths quicker than me. And just thinking, come on, make a mistake, and then I made one, and just literally spun the wheels coming out the hairpin once, and that's it. Cost me a second on the next lap, second and a half on the next lap, and that was the end of that. So just cruised around to the end, and then race 2, yeah, it all went wrong. I won't start describing what happens because people get upset that I'm calling out names and this, that, and the other. There was a bit of me. There was a bit of other people. Just wrong place, one time, really. No one does these things deliberately, We've covered that. But it just seemed very... it wasn't just me that had problems yesterday, put it that way.
Yeah, race. Well, I did get turned in race 1. I think Adam Delmont got me in race 1. I think Juan Pablo Tononi got me at some point. I also got done by new driver Sebastian, which was quite a bad one as well.
Yeah, I had the privilege of coming back from 27th place in race 2 and driving back through the field, and I saw a lot of interesting moves, including a couple on you, Clyde, as I was coming back through the field, and then looked like there's some dubious stuff going on, which hopefully people will calm down.
Yeah, I think I even made a comment in the chat that I think I got a target on my car tonight. And interestingly, just looking at the race 2 result, Mike Taliancic and Steve Lavalley were the only 2 drivers to get 0 incidents in that race. So, well done to them. That's hats off, especially as Mike was starting from 18th as well. So that takes some going, coming through the field of 18 drivers and getting 0 incidents.
Yeah, he was brilliant yesterday.
He was brilliant. I was on a different league, I think, and I think it requires a little bit of luck as well, but he fully deserved that luck because he was amazing.
Yeah, I think you're right. You do need some luck, and sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't, and sometimes you get it and don't get it all in the same lap.
Yeah, it's racing at the end of the day. Yeah.
We was discussing before we came on air the big pile up in the second race, and I personally see it all kicking off in front of me and just turned left onto the grass, missed everything, got on the track, and I'd gained about 6 or 7 positions, and then 2 corners later I got wiped out. So yeah, that's sort of good luck and bad luck all in a couple of turns.
Yeah, it happens that way sometimes.
So yeah, race 1 was a pretty, I'd call it a standard race. The usual suspects were up the front. As you guys have said, Mike was on a different level to everybody else last night. And then race 2, spinny wheel 20 minus 2, reverse grid of 18. So you guys had to work for your points in the second race, but as we sort of touched on, there was a lot going on that maybe didn't need to go on, but there was still some very good drives out there. I think the new guys, you can forgive them a little bit. They're new to the league. They don't realise what we're all about, but the older heads should know better. But it was good to see the likes of Ryan Walker getting a couple of good results last night. Brand new to the league, brand new to the cup. Who else did I look at? Jose Borges hasn't raced with us for a while. He got a good result. And then drivers like Steve Lavalley and Bobby Child, just keeping out of trouble and scoring some big points in that second race. That's the way to do it, isn't it? Like you say, be lucky and keep your nose clean and score the points.
Yeah, I think that's it's an important point to make. There was some great racing out there. From looking at the broadcast, there was a great battle between Dave Jansen and Adam Delmont that went on for pretty much the whole of that second race. I think it was, and amongst others, so it wasn't all bad. There was some dodgy incidents, but there was also a lot of great racing.
I think that's the same in all races, though. We don't tend to, on the chat in Discord and things like that, we never tend to talk about the good side of what happened and the great racing. You get the odd, well done so-and-so, great race, but if something bad happens, the whole thing seems to kick off.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you there, Clyde. We tend to focus on some of the bad stuff, but really, when you're looking on track and some of the battles, there's some impressive stuff happening out there. I want to give a shout out to Bobby Childs. Bobby's new to our league, and he was really struggling with the car. On Wednesday night, I spent a couple of hours with him. And he took instruction very well, much better than my wife does, and had a great result in the second race, finishing 15th out of a field of 30 cars. So, hats off to Bobby, and looks like his fastest lap time was actually faster than anything that he had accomplished in practice earlier in the week as well. So good for him.
On a lighter note, I like Bobby being in the series just for his pre-race comments on the driver chat. With his American accent, I thought he was in the wrong race. I thought I was sitting at the start of a NASCAR grid.
Right, Johnny's just put his mic up his arse, as you can all hear. Are you back, Johnny?
Oh, could you not hear me?
That's better. One thing I would like to point out, a slight negative. If you read the rules, it does say if you turn somebody, we expect you to slow down and give the place back. That didn't happen for me last night. It didn't happen for a lot of people. And I need to apologise publicly again to Mr. Ronald Moons. I am his one and only member of his fan club. But I did turn Ronald. But I did stop. And I waited, and I lost about 6 or 7 places just to make sure that he got back in front of me. It's a good sporting gesture, guys and girls listening. You've made the mistake, you've turned somebody. Stop, let them get past you, and then go again. And hopefully that stops protests and bad feelings. I don't know what, Tony, I know you've done it in the past. As of you, Johnny, I've seen you do it. So I don't know if there's anything else you guys can say to endorse that.
It's a good one, but I wasn't aware it was a rule.
Yeah, it's in the sporting code, and I think it's just based on the type of league that we have. That's a pretty sociable league, even though it is competitive in spots. We really need to kind of rein ourselves in every once in a while. And I know the incidents you're talking about, Clyde. I reviewed them this morning, and it's. If you mess up, just own up to it. Slow down for a little bit, let the other person back, and then take the spot legitimately instead of push to pass, as they say.
Do we enforce that? Is it something that's worth enforcing?
Well, there's a protest system. Very few people use it, so that's the only thing, right? I believe there'll be a couple of letters of warning out this week.
Yeah, maybe that one might be worth enforcing as the only one. Just without any protest. Because people don't tend to protest because they're all so friendly, and it doesn't really make a big difference after the event. Once you've had an incident, that's it's cost you your race. It's pointless. What do you get back if you protest? Not a lot. So might be worth doing.
I agree with you, Johnny, on that point. You don't get anything back, but the trouble is if somebody doesn't protest it, that driver may think it's okay to do it again in the future. They may be blind and not know they've done something wrong. So, it's always worth a protest. And to be fair to the guys, I don't have anything to do with the race stewarding, but to be fair to the guys that do it, they look at everything, they look at it from multiple angles, multiple cars, and 9 times out of 10, it's just a warning. You've done something stupid, don't let it happen again. And that tends to stop it. In our rules, it does actually say drivers gaining a position using unfair means are expected to give places back. We pride ourselves on sportsmanship and clean racing, so if you recognise that you have unfairly gained a position, then please allow a position reversal to take place at your earliest opportunity. So it's there, black and white, in the rules. So, as you say, maybe that is something that, we get the stewards to start looking at, whether there's a protest or not.
That's my thoughts on it. I think that'd be a good idea.
Agreed.
Okay, so let's finish.
At the same time, I think that'd cancel out 90% of incidents. Sorry, just the last thing on that, because there's not generally bad racing that goes on in the league, is there? So.
No, you're right. When you look at some of the incidents, a lot of them are genuine mistakes or genuine racing incidents. I've said this before, I'm still yet to see anything that I would deem as malicious. So, our drivers are bloody good, but sometimes they just need a jerk on the chain just to say, look, don't do that again.
Agreed.
So we've sort of talked about driving standards. I don't think there was a great deal of post-race bitching as we've got it headlined. I think there was a little bit flying about privately. Yeah, but nothing. I don't think there's anything that we need to jump up and down on that was on the forum. And as Tony said, just going on to standings, as Tony said before we came on air, yes, there was a lot happened last night, but boy, did that close up the standings.
Yeah,
great.
See Michael in the lead, with the drop score at 1275, 1 point ahead of Johnny Brandon at 1274, and then George McClay at 1260, and Foggy at 1245. So those guys are all bunched up real close, and then you've got Victor, who's still mad at me, Chris Jackson, myself, a few points back, but 150 odd points between first and seventh, which is good.
That's nothing.
Yeah, you can make that up or lose it in one race meeting, really. And on the club championship front, Gary Croft had another good meeting, and Ant Woodward had a better meeting in second, so he's closed the gap now. He's only 82 points behind Ant, and I'm sadly, after last night, dropping away in third, 142 points behind Ant. But still a long way to go. We're not even halfway through yet.
Gary couldn't have had that great a meeting yesterday because I think he was involved with me, and I should probably apologise for my little rant on the radio during the race as well. So regardless of who was to blame, I was wrong to do that. So apologies, Gary.
And then Tony, new leaders in the team championship.
Yeah, that was a bit of a gift. So we'll take it, and I think that's very close as well. Was it 1 point, 2 points, something like that?
4 points.
4 points. We'll take the 4 points. But long season, and we'll see what happens. It was as I say, yesterday was a bit of a gift for us.
There's no drop score in the team championship, is that right?
No
That's
drops.
correct. Yeah.
So we just had a shocker yesterday. Okay.
Moving on to the safe driver. We've got Mr. Taliancic is currently leading that. And Mr. Lane O'Connor is in second. And then third is Mr. Brandon. So Lane's having a hell of a run in that little mini championship.
Yeah, I've tried to big Lane up and tell you guys that he's doing well, but you keep having a go at me for being biased, so I'm not going to comment on that.
Yeah, well, that's unfair for you to comment because you're biased. Moving on to the Fred Bingham Forever Forward Award. He is, and he's a nice bloke as well. Victor Tanaka, he's looking like Mr. Untouchable with his overtaking manoeuvres at the moment. He's 20 points ahead of Nicole, and then Johnny, you're a further 6 back in that battle.
But where is he in the Safe Driver Award?
Well, there is that, and people have said you can win this Fred Bingham Award by having a crap race 1 and then a good race 2, but I'm sure this is just a little mini championship that if you win it, all well and good, but people don't take it that serious.
Yeah, Victor drove a good race yesterday, and he did stay out of trouble yesterday, so give him that.
I think he's found that line at the moment where he's quite threatening when he's behind you, but he's not doing anything that's bad at the moment. He used to full on send it, and but he's not doing that. He has a look. It's a bit scary for the guy in front. He's doing really well, I think, Victor, at the moment. I think he's found a really good balance where he's quite a force out there at the moment.
He certainly is. And he also, while we're on the subject of Victor, he took the V8ESC lap record for Phillip Island last night with a 125.835. So well done, Victor.
That's a rapid lap if that's the case.
125? 129 maybe?
Something like that. Cider, numbers, and no glasses don't do too well.
My God, he would have lapped the field twice.
Right, so I think that pretty much wraps up Phillip Island for now. I'd say it was a fun meeting for some, it was a bad meeting for others, but we had a fantastic turnout of 30 cars.
That was nice to see.
It was, and on the whole, it wasn't that bad, unless your name was Clyde. This is where I normally put you guys on the spot and ask you to name your driver of the meeting. I don't think it's really putting you on the spot.
Shall we all say it together?
Shall we?
2, 1.
Mike Taliancic.
Yeah, fabulous race from him, and well deserved. No stop, and I think he won by 16 seconds. And even if I had let Victor by, I don't think Victor would have caught him.
Yeah, and obviously Mike and his fuel-saving skills has prompted a little bit of a chat in the background about what we're going to try next season. We will talk about that in a little while, but Mike Taliancic was just a different class last night, and it is nice to see. Mike is a really, really nice guy. I know he's doing a lot of work with Andrew Hoffman at the moment, trying to improve Andrew's racecraft and what he does on the track. And Mike was with us a couple of seasons ago, won the championship, then we didn't see him. Now he's come back again. And I think he's better than he was before. What do you think, Johnny?
Yeah, he's fantastic, and I mean it makes me laugh listening to the broadcast because they think he's been off doing GT3s or something or racing Mazdas. Mike is a full-on Scops V8 driver. I think he runs a team, Pursuit Sim Racing, which he started up for himself and was having a chat with him yesterday. He's trying to bring in some new young talent and bring people into Scops and into the V8 with the esports series coming up for those guys out there. They're doing really great things against some big teams out there. But make no mistake, he knows exactly what he's doing with this car. And yes, it's an advantage for him. He's done a hell of a lot of laps around Phillip Island, he said to me, especially recently with a recent Scops round and the official week's round racing, of which he had one of the best results of his life so far. He's done a lot of laps at Phillip Island, he was saying. So even though he's been away from the series, he's not been away from the car and he's not been away from the circuits. So he knows what he's doing 100%. And for me, it can only be good. You only get better by racing people that are better than you. And at the moment, he's showing us he's better than us. And for me personally, that's a great thing to have in this league. I hope he sticks around. It can only make you better.
I agree with you there, Johnny. I understand his teammates are calling him the professor of late, so he's certainly laying a lesson down on us, and hopefully he can share some of that knowledge. But I think anytime that you're racing against good caliber drivers, it just makes not only the league better, but it makes all the drivers better as well. So fantastic result for him, and to Michael's credit, I was chatting with him yesterday in the interview room, and he came right out and said, we need to do something about these fuel saving races, even though it would be a detriment to him, take away some of his advantage. He wanted to make the racing even closer as well because he sees that he has such an advantage there. So that's a testament to the type of guy he is, and full on credit for him.
Yeah, he is a good old, good guy, good all-round guy. Final word, just a shame he's a sheep shagger. Anyway, moving on. We now have our very special guest in the house, Mr. Chaz Draycott. Good evening, Chaz.
Good evening, gentlemen. How are we?
Evening, Chaz.
Hola.
Yeah, we're all good. So, bit short notice tonight for you coming on as our special guest. Yeah. But something that I'm interested in, and hopefully a lot of the other drivers out there and anybody else that listens, is your screen capture work and your video work. So we'll start with the screen captures. Now,
okay.
I got you to do me some last season, I believe it was.
Yeah.
And they turned out absolutely fantastic. So for me and all the other people listening, what's the secret in a decent screen capture?
A lot of the time, I always find that the positioning of the actual subject is quite key to it. You'll notice in a lot of the stuff that I do, if you've seen it before, the car's never really in the middle. A lot of the time, if you're at a real event, if you're using a proper camera, I mean, I've done photography before at motorsport events, that if you are panning, a lot of the time, you're never going to keep the car bang on in the middle of the shot. It sometimes might be to the side. It sometimes might be at the bottom of the shot, at the top, depending on what else you want to get in there as well. It's all about sort of setting the scene of the image that you're getting and making sure that you've got enough of the surroundings in there to give it a bit of emphasis as such. Some shots are like close-ups where you'll only have a corner of the car if it's stationary, for example, but I'd say a lot of the time it's the actual composition of where the car is in the shot.
So maybe I should have involved my wife in this then, because where you're saying about, the car's not always in the center of the shot. Last year's Daytona 500, my wife decided she was going to have the camera. And when we got back to the hotel and we looked at the pictures, we had lots of pictures of track of where the cars used to be. Now you don't get that problem on iRacing, so you can pause, you can move camera angles, you can do what do you have a favourite camera angle, car position, or something like that, or are you looking at interesting things in the background of the track, or maybe a curb strike or something like that?
The main thing I tend to use, I always use the scenic camera that iRacing has. Anyone that's been in the sim and not had the car on track will know that it just has, every track has just a couple of what they call scenic cameras where it just flicks between each single one. As a trackside camera, it's a good base to start with because of the fact that it's static to start with, and it's not fixed to anything. So it's not fixed at looking at a specific car. It's not fixed at being in a certain position. You can put it wherever you want when you move around. You can zoom in as much as you want. You can move barriers out of the way. You can do whatever you want. And that then comes into the fact that you want to put the camera in a position where an actual photographer would be stood. I see a lot of people, I mean, not to sort of badmouth anyone's work, but I've seen a lot of screenshots where it's as if the camera is like floating next to the car on the track, or it's like on a curb but at like eye level. And you think, if for realism purposes, there's not going to be a bloke stood there, you know what I mean? Unless he's a bit mental. But it's all down to where the camera is. I tend to use scenic just because it's a good base to start from. You don't have to worry about like the TV cameras that seem to always focus on the car, for example.
Okay, and there was a big thing. I can't remember if it was the last build or the build before, but I can remember you pissing your pants about motion blur. How do you get that to work in iRacing?
Well, it's something you can just turn on and off in the iRacing graphics. It's actually there's quite an interesting thing about it is that you can choose whether it only affects the cameras when you're in the car, or whether it's attached to the car like a chase camera or roll bar camera, or you can choose whether it affects the trackside ones, so any of the TV cameras as well, because obviously when they're a bit further away and they're catching a lot more scenery, it can ruin your frame rate a bit more if it's trying to blur everything. iRacing have done a really good job of it as well, to be fair, because before now I always had to get screenshots of a car that looked like it wasn't moving, cut it all out individually, even go into like the windows and the roll cage and everything, separate the background and then blur that. And it used to take forever, but yeah, iRacing have done a cracking job in the motion blur now. But yeah, that helps a lot, I think, because we all know that these sims look amazing. I mean, you look at the footage that's on screen right now, it's insane. You could genuinely sort of mistake it for a real life race that's going on, except for tiny details in the background. But iRacing put a lot of effort into that as well. But it's never going to be perfect. So if you can blur those things out, but you've still got what would be a realistic sort of background with RVs and tents and gazebos and all that sort of nonsense by the side of the track, then yeah, it does add a hell of a lot to the images that you can get.
Yeah, that's true. I'm gonna have another play with that some point because I just couldn't. I don't think I could find it, let alone make it work. So
I can say that about something myself, but let's not go
there. So you've got your screen capture. What could you then do to it to make it look better, to make it stand out, something that you can be proud of, even print it out, stick a picture on your wall type of thing?
Well, when you capture them, there's two ways you can capture screenshots with iRacing. They have one where, I mean, you can choose what button it works on. I tend to just use print screen normally. That captures it in a 1080 size. But you can also, within your what they call the INI file, or app INI, it's like a little notepad document, you can get higher res screenshots that would be 4 times the normal size. So it'll do 4 captures that are 1080. The only issue with that is, I've found recently, because it renders the screen 4 times, shadows tend to get cut in half. So you'll have a car that looks, you'll get your screenshot, it'll look all beautiful, you'll love it. You'll have your car, and then suddenly the shadow will just stop completely. It's an issue iRacing have had for a while, unfortunately, and I understand it's a nightmare to fix. But it just means that if you're going to get a high res one, you need to have a low res version with a shadow to then try and overlay it in Photoshop. But cutting out all that and doing that is an absolute nightmare. But when it comes to editing them, it tends to be just a bit of lighting and a bit of colour messing about. You can do it on pretty much any sort of basic photo editing software. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. But iRacing goes for the realistic interpretation of cars, scenery, and color, where you could paint your wheels bright fluorescent yellow, but they're not always going to be. They can look quite dull compared to other pictures, and I like that. They really do go for a good realistic approach on it. But if you want to make it a bit brighter, a bit more contrasty, it is just everyday sort of sliders, contrast, brightness, things like that. Usually just making them a little bit lighter and adding a bit of contrast is all I tend to do to them, really. It's quite basic.
Excellent. So before I move on to videos, Tony, anything you want to ask Chaz about screen captures?
Chaz, you're I guess I would say you're for hire, correct?
Essentially, yeah.
So if somebody wanted a good screenshot of their car, something that was printable on a color printer, what would we be looking at for that?
Doesn't really take a lot of time to do, if I'm honest now. That's been cut down a lot. When I used to do 8K screenshots for people that were massive, but they took, you're talking half an hour just to cut round the car to make sure it was pixel perfect. I tend to do sets of shots now, probably do about 5 sets, as long as someone can provide me with a livery, a replay of whatever they want. Just give me the replay file, and yeah, I'll do it for £5 for a set of 5 pictures.
Okay, so that's pretty reasonable, and just for our members out there, if you want a decent shot of your car, I've seen Chaz's work, and it's fabulous. Shoot him a PM, and he'll work something up for you.
Nice one, buddy.
Yeah, and I'll second that because Chaz has done some for me, and he doesn't know it yet, but he'll be doing some more shortly. So, Johnny, any questions for Chaz on screen capturing before we move on to video edit?
No, I'm hopeless on all that. I'm hopeless on all that sort of stuff. I think it's amazing what you do, and I've seen the pictures on Facebook, etc., and they look fantastic. And one thing I will say is it'd be interesting to see what you think. Do you just do it on iRacing, or do you cover other games like Project Cars or that course?
I've only ever really done it on iRacing. I've done some personal stuff on the flight simulator, DCS, Digital Combat Simulator, but that's just mucking about, really. I mean, that sim looks incredible on its own. iRacing does too, but it tends to be just on iRacing. I've spent so long, doing all the trailers and the actual screenshots and things that I'm so used to using the cameras now. It gets a bit scary, really. If I record a video of myself doing it and just watch how quickly I get the camera in a position and get a shot, I'm just quite bewildered by it. It just happens now.
Yeah, well, that's a good thing, I think, really, just on iRacing, because it's interesting to me how a lot of people think the graphics on iRacing are useless compared to other sims, whereas I think they're great. I think they look more realistic than any of the others. Especially when somebody like you gets hold of them. I think it's really good. It's really underrated in people's opinion.
Yeah, well, like I was saying, they go for a realistic portrayal of the lighting and the colours, and I mean, if you look at some of the shots I've done before where you're looking down almost as if it's zoomed in from a helicopter or something, and you can see the reflections on the track surface, and it's just stunning. I mean, when they recently added in the day-night cycle, they updated a lot of the actual reflections from the cars as well. The cars didn't really used to reflect a lot of scenery, but if you've got a completely solid black car now and you drive it around a bit, you'll see marshal posts, cones, and sponsor hoardings and things reflecting even in the wheel nuts. I remember doing an 8K screenshot of a Ferrari in the Daytona 24-hour at night, and I zoomed in that far that the central wheel nut filled my screen, and you could see the marshal's post that it was driving past.
That's awesome.
It was quite scary. But yeah, I know what you're saying about, like, compared to other games. I mean, things like Project Cars, Assetto Corsa Competizione, they look amazing, but I don't know whether you guys agree, but in my opinion, they seem too over-processed. It seems like it's always something out of a movie. It's over-dramatic.
It's all too glossy and shiny, isn't it? And too much colour and they do look great, but they don't necessarily look realistic. Whereas I think iRacing have really got that down at the moment, the realism.
Yeah, well, we say that. I mean, if you look at the sky on the footage that's on screen right now, it's kind of goes against that, really, if I'm honest with you. But like the lighting on the cars and stuff, and the sort of tint that it gives everything, it looks like it's happening late on in the afternoon there. It actually looks like it's taking place at the right time of day with the right conditions and stuff. except for that sky being dragged down.
That's the alien abduction clouds, as we call them.
Well, it just happens in Australia, doesn't it, I suppose? They're
Yeah.
all messed up down there.
I think that's one of the first tracks that that iRacing did. So they've come a long way on their tracks. It'll be interesting to see Catalunya in a couple of weeks.
Oh, I can't wait for that.
Right, so we've got a couple of questions about screen capturing, but we'll save them till the end. Let's move on to videos and video editing. And obviously, the less said about R1, the better at the moment. But Chaz, you do some. That was good, wasn't it? That I didn't slag you off at all. Your work on the videos is fantastic. What sort of time do you put into these videos?
It varies a lot. I think some of the earlier
obviously
ones...
ours was none, but
oh god,
he's never coming back.
Some of the earlier ones that I did when I was getting used to it we're talking probably about 3 to 4 hours capturing footage from the sim, and then to match it all to music, get bits of the graphics overlaid and stuff. Probably talking another 4, 5 maybe. The World GT Championship trailer that I did, the Season 5 one, was my most ambitious. It comes out at like 5.5 minutes long or something. It was just completely stupid. There was no point. It could have literally been a minute like the most recent one was. But I think overall in that, I probably put about 18 hours into it.
Right, okay. And I'm guessing that you use some sort of specialist video editing software, not like Windows Movie Maker or something like.
Well, to be fair, the reason I got picked up for doing trailers was I used to run the BSR Kia Club series when that started up, and I thought, I'll just make an intro for the broadcast or something. And I did that, and everyone loved it. And that was actually on Movie Maker as well, using like standard fonts and everything. It was a bit of a mad one, that. But since then, I've dabbled with Adobe Premiere, but I just can't get on with it because I'm so used to Sony Vegas that it's each to their own really with stuff like that. But I found that Vegas, once you get used to it, it's so easy to do anything. I'm quite limited in what I know on that. People ask me questions sometimes, and I'm just like, I don't know. I've never really tried doing that, to be honest with you, because I always try and find ways of shortcutting stuff. Like I've seen people do things where they'll have certain objects fading into others and have other bits in the background, and they'll apply these layer masks and things like that, or like sort of cut objects out manually and then have them overlaying each other. And I don't understand why people do it sometimes, because you can always just add another sort of video channel in the actual software and just fade them into one another that way. But I don't know whether that's just because it makes it more flexible in future or what. But yeah, it's Sony Vegas that I tend to stick with. It's just, yeah, I've never had an issue with it at all.
I agree. Vegas is much better than Adobe all day long.
Yeah. Adobe's fantastic for loads of other stuff. I mean, programs like After Effects are just incredible. I've done very little dabbling in After Effects, but I need to start using that a lot more because it's just unbelievable the amount of stuff you can do. But it's one of those programs where it takes forever to do anything because of how good it is. It's almost like you pay for what you get, but you spend the time on something to make it look good, and it will look good. But it's just that you have to spend forever on After Effects to do anything.
Okay, well, to be honest, mate, it's all wizardry to me. I have played with Windows Movie Maker, but less said about that, the better. Johnny, any questions on video editing for Chad?
No. It's easy
Nice
enough.
Tony, any questions for Chaz?
I've made some attempts at making some tutorial videos, and my ability in doing that is very, very amateurish. So I'm in envy of the stuff that Chaz does, and I hope he continues on, and perhaps we'll get a decent one for our series.
Oh, I'll make sure of it, mate. Don't you worry.
Maybe.
Eventually.
Well, somebody's actually getting more digs than me in this podcast. Is great.
Hashtag soon.
Yeah, Chaz is late. That used to be a hashtag everyone used to do. When I didn't do the points in the club series, it was always hashtag Chaz is late.
Anyway, so if you can think of any questions for Chaz, obviously get them on the chat, and we'll get them get all the questions answered at the end. And Chaz, if you want to stick your details in the chat, just in case anybody wants a video in a couple of years' time or some screenshots fairly soon. Yeah, we'll see if we can get you some business, and then obviously the league will take their cut out of it.
Yeah, of course. I wonder what you were going to say when you said stick your details in, but yeah.
So we'll move it on. Hopefully Chaz is going to stay around with us. Next race preview. So we've got sprint and feature from Virginia International Raceway, somewhere that the series has never been before. A track that I can't ever remember racing on. Tony, I'll start with you. What do you know about VIR?
It's a big track in the middle of a field. Very technical at the very beginning. First few corners, really, really technical. Then very high speed S's. Really need to set up the car well to take all the little bumps there. There's a lot of course cutting or curb hopping, I should say, that happens in that section. And then we go around the old oak tree and up a mountainous hill. That's a very good spot for overtaking, big draft area, and then a little bit of a technical part going back down to the finish. It's a long track. It's about 3 miles, 4.5 kilometers, somewhere like that. And the races, I think, are going to be 11 laps and 22 laps. 22 laps putting us right on the fuel limit. So may have to save a little bit or use that draft.
And Johnny, have you got any experience of VIR?
Not in the V8. I think I did a race in BSRTC there once. But yeah, I've probably only raced it once or twice. Yeah, I think it's a good circuit. I think I've said it before. I don't think there's any such thing as a bad track, really. I think it's an interesting track, but I haven't got a lot of experience there. And I would be looking forward to it, but I'm not 100% sure I'm actually going to be there at the moment. So, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. So I've never raced there myself, but I'm told it's quite a narrow track. Chaz, you tend to do more other shit than racing. I think I watched you playing Minecraft the other night for some unknown reason because I couldn't sleep. Have you got any experience of VIR?
Yeah, I can't remember what series it was that I raced it in though. I think it was just like a one-off event. It's very technical. It's really underestimated a lot of the time. There's a lot of sections where you can't really overtake. First section's a bit sort of nail it, stop, but then the midsection will happen towards the end, and there's so many sort of right, left, right flowing sections that aren't flat either. They're going over oscillations, they're going up and down, and it's very difficult to race around, I find. That might be down to my lack of talent, but hot lapping there and trying to get every 10th out without getting any off tracks is a nightmare. It's very, very difficult to get the whole thing together because it's quite a long lap as well.
Yeah, I've racked my brains today, which doesn't take very long, to try and work out why we haven't raced there before. I looked at pit stalls, and there's 62 pit stalls. I just can't work out why we haven't been there before. But we're going there for the sprint series next weekend, and then obviously the main series 2 weeks after that. I suppose, like every other track, it's going to be, practice. Tony, any hints, tips for the people before we start practicing?
Actually, I did a few laps just before the broadcast to reacquaint myself because I think it's probably been about 1.5 years since I ran there, and I actually ran the Phillip Island set which worked quite well. So that's the first hint for people that whatever you use this weekend will probably apply to Phillip Island as well. It is tricky. I would say if you haven't been there before, just get in a bunch of laps at the very beginning. Just slowly try and understand what's happening with the corners, because they can be very, very difficult. And as Chaz says, there's a lot of 90 right, 90 left, 90 right, 90 left type of thing. It is very technical, and it will take some time to get some clean laps. We're probably looking in the 148, 49 area for fast guys.
Okay, and Johnny,
if
obviously.
I'm not mistaken, I think it might be on the official calendar this week as well. Is that right, Tony? Or am I wrong?
Official was about 3 weeks ago, and I didn't participate. Yeah.
So, Johnny, you said you haven't got a lot of experience around there. So, what's your plan? Is it just practice, practice, practice?
Yeah. Yeah, I actually prefer doing the tracks that I don't really know what I'm doing. I think it's sometimes it can be beneficial to not have any bad habits or preconceived ideas, especially in this car. So quite looking forward to it. As I say, I'm not entirely sure if I'm going to be around, but I'll definitely be doing some laps there either way. So I think it's a really great underused track on iRacing. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it, but it's definitely going to be a case of put some laps in, because as Chaz said, as Tony said, it's a tricky circuit in most cars. So when you add the V8 into that equation, I'm expecting it to be fun, shall we say.
It's going to be a right handful in these cars, I'll tell you that, because of the amount of oscillation.
Yeah, it could be interesting then. So we've had a couple of tricky tracks already this season. So yeah, could be in for another interesting race too, I think. So VIR coming up, sprint series this weekend. For anybody that's interested, we could really do with more cars on the grid for that. And then 2 weeks' time, we obviously will be there with a main series, hopefully with another bumper grid. Hopefully Johnny decides to race instead of going maggot drowning again. No,
it's not fishing this time. It's not fishing.
Is that what he calls it?
That's what Clyde calls it. It's not what I call it.
Oh, you're on about fishing. Oh, right.
Oh yeah.
Ah.
No, I won't. It's not fishing. I might be going away somewhere else for a more relaxing time.
Ooh, sounds top secret.
I don't know. Just haven't decided where or if we're definitely going yet. That's all. It's quite last minute. So yeah, we'll see.
Right. Okay, guys. Let's move it on then. League news. So there isn't a great deal of league news about at the moment. We'll talk about, because I know you two are fairly vocal about this, and it's nice for the people outside of our little chats and the admin chats to know what we're thinking about for next season. So a lot of the races this season, the feature races, look like they're going to be fuel savers. Now, there's no way we will change anything for this season because it's not fair on people. But, as Mike suggested to Tony in the interview room, perhaps we should look at the fuel level for the cars and maybe drop the fuel level a bit. I'll go to Tony first because Tony's probably the worst fuel saver out of everybody. What are your thoughts on this, Tony? Is that a good idea, dropping the fuel level? And if it is, where do you think we should drop it to?
Well, at least I'm winning something. Fuel level, yeah, we could drop it a little bit. I think maybe to 65%. But as we were talking about before the broadcast, if we could extend the race a little bit, I think that would be better, actually. In the big scheme of things, if we could get a 50-minute feature race. And I know that means that something else has to go because we only have a 2-hour window that we pay for. So my suggestion would be that we cut out a little bit of the qualifying on the broadcast, maybe, only 5 minutes, the last 5 minutes of qualifying. And the other thing is, are we interested in tightening up the window between the first and the second race? And I know that there has been some concern there about whether or not 10 minutes is enough for everybody to get in. Because some people have had difficulty in the past. But those are my thoughts. I would prefer we go a little longer in the race. I think it'd be much more enjoyable. But if we had to change it, probably 65% from the 75 would make it work.
And Johnny, same questions to you. What are your thoughts on?
I agree with Tony there. I mean, I'd prefer to see longer races. Yeah, I prefer to see longer races purely for the sake of having a longer race more than anything else. It does add something into the strategy, having it like it is, but it just seems like it's all over a bit quick at the moment. I just prefer a longer race, and I think there's scope to do that within the broadcast time. Whether that means cutting. I mean, the last the race yesterday, the races are over with an hour and 50 minutes of the broadcast. So potentially there's 10 minutes leeway there, whether that eats into interview time or whether that's not included in it, and that's additional anyway. So there's potentially scope to do it, I think. So yeah, longer races would be my preference. Maybe a longer second race and a slightly shorter first race. 15-minute sprint followed by a 50-minute, or as the maximum we could get feature race.
Yeah, I think from an admin side, like I say, the 2-hour thing is the issue. Obviously, we try and keep the costs down as much as possible for our sponsor, Racetech. The easiest way to do it, if you want to stick 10 minutes onto the feature race, is to cut that 20-minute joining time down to 10. But I think if we do that, people are just going to have to accept that, if you're having trouble getting in, there's nothing we can do about it. If you're not in for the race, then unfortunately it's tough shit. That'll be the way we go. At the moment, we've got a little bit of leeway.
Yeah, it's risky to cut that gap down, but I'd rather they didn't. They start the broadcast at the end of quali. For the last. I mean, yesterday's broadcast, they had a good 10 minutes of a 20-minute quali session on the broadcast, and then at the end of the second race was the total time of broadcast was an hour and 50. So I think there's scope to do it if you cut out that 10 minutes of quali, for example. Then you've effectively got 20 minutes of your 2-hour window still left.
Or if we even cut down qualifying to 10 minutes.
Yeah, we don't need 20-minute quali.
10 minutes gets you 4 laps at the longest of tracks.
That's a much better idea than shortening the gap between races, I think.
Yeah, get you 10 laps at Littleton Park.
Well, to be fair, we normally have a 15-minute quali. There was something else that was going to happen last night that we couldn't get sorted out in time. That's why we had 20 minutes. So you would only shave 5 minutes off the quali.
I think if we cut that down to 10, you only need 10 minutes in quali, because at the moment in the main series, the quali sessions tend to be morning sessions with the weather on dynamic, which means 90% of the track's getting hotter in that 10 minutes. So you're going to do your quickest time early on anyway. So 15, 20 minutes, it doesn't matter. You only really need 5-minute quali, personally, but 10 minutes would be better if it gave a little bit of extra time for the second race. And again, yesterday we seem to have 10 minutes left at the end, so there's another 10 minutes to add on. So yeah, there should be plenty of time left to make that second race longer.
Okay, let's have a vote. All in favor, aye.
Well, it's food for thought for the admin team. So my concerns is that time slot, and I do fully understand what you're saying, Johnny. You just there's so many things that can happen that I'm always conscious of trying not to go over that 2-hour time slot. Anyway,
the flip side of that at the moment is that if Michael Taliancic wasn't around, it would actually be really quite good because everybody else is equally as rubbish as each other.
Very true.
With the various strategy options. So, but not suggesting for a minute we lose Taliancic because I think it's great that he's there. But yeah, just in the interest of a longer race for me.
Okay, so the other talking point that we've had is what to do about incident points and bonuses. So bonuses and penalties around incident points next season. I know you guys have got some fairly strong views on them. A lot of people have said it's very easy for the fast guys to pick up 0 incidents in the sprint race and therefore gain extra points. So we've had suggestions of losing them totally, the bonus points. We've had suggestions of overhauling the incident point penalties. Johnny, what's your views?
I quite like them. As far as saying the fast guys, it's easy to get them in the first race. I don't think that's the case. I think it's quite difficult to get them. Some tracks are easier than others. And then if you are at the front, you're going to be, especially this season, way down in the middle of the field at best for the second race, which then makes it incredibly difficult. And then with the structure of the point system anyway, so the first race is ultimately on people's pace. Your qualifying is where your pace is and ability is, if you like. But the points in the second race with the reverse grid is double the value of what the first race is, which I'm not sure is the fairest way of doing it, but it works for the league and it keeps things close. Ultimately people's ability and pace should be rewarded in race 1 because that's the true reflection of what's going on. So I think it works well as it is, in the interests of keeping things close for the league. I don't think it's as easy as people think it is, because however easy it might look to get these cars around the track and not pick up an incursion, I think Tony will agree, it's never as easy as it looks. You're pretty much always on the knife edge and walking that tightrope. So yeah, it might look easy, but it's not easy to get them. But I like having the bonus points. I think there should be bigger deductions for lots of incursions.
So just to answer your question on the points for the races, so the way it's set up at the moment, sprint races are double the super sprint races. Sorry, no, they're not. Sprint races and super sprint races are the same. Double for feature and then double again for endurance. So what it does is if you miss a round, so for any reason, it doesn't matter what race meeting you miss, you can only lose the same amount of points. So if it's a super sprint round, there's 450 points on the table. If it's a sprint and feature round, 450 points on the table. If it's an endurance round, 450 points on the table. That's why we set it up like that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. It would transform the points table, though, if you awarded 300 points for the first race and 150 for the second race.
Yeah, that ain't happening.
But that would reward ability is the wrong word. It would reward pace, and the fastest guys would be banking the points. So the argument that the fastest guys can easily pick up incursion bonuses because they start at the front in the first race and it's easy, I think is negated by that fact.
Fair enough. And Tony, what's your thoughts on this?
I've always said I'm not a fan of bonus points, but it does make things interesting, and I don't know how much of a difference it actually makes at the end of the year. I do agree that for a lot of incident points or a lot of incidents in the event, that we may need to increase the penalties for that. So, we do know that it's very easy to get a 4 by contact and, in the second race. But, I think that anytime you're approaching more than 10 incidents, maybe we need to, point per incident type thing or something in that neighborhood.
Totally. And
But
there's certain tracks, Tony. I mean, I'm sure you'd agree that if you're prepared to take the 1Xs, and bearing in mind there's no limit, if you're prepared to take the 1Xs at certain tracks, you can find half a second a lap.
Spa.
So I think yeah, Spas. I mean, Spas are second a lap if you're prepared to take the 1Xs generally. But there's a lot of tracks and a lot of corners where you can make life a lot easier if you just pick up those 1Xs. And I think there should be bigger penalties for more than 10 incursions, personally.
Yeah, I would agree. For anything more than 10, I'm 100% with you there.
So a couple of the suggestions that I've had so far is at the moment you get your bonus if you get 0 incidents, and then if you get under 10, that's free. 10 to 19 is 10, and so on and so forth. So one of the really, really simple suggestions, and something that I think will be fairly easy to implement next season, is just go to a 1 penalty point for every incident scoring system. So if you get 27 incident points, you lose 27 points. If you get 2, you lose 2 points. And that would be very, very easy to admin.
Certainly be easy admin.
I'm going to be the bad guy here, but I think it should be more to disencourage it, because if you think one position gain is 10 points in a feature race, that's 10 laps of having an incursion in a second where you could gain 3-4 temps. It's still worth taking. I think you should have, how easy it would be to implement, I don't know, but I think you should have 1 point up to maybe 10 or 15, and then after that, especially over 20, you should be losing more because you're obviously taking a mick.
Yeah, but how many of those guys are actually going to impact the standings? They're not.
I'm not going to name names, but last season it was a big issue. There was tracks where there was big gains, and then certain people decided, I was seeing people with high 30s on incursions just to take the race win. And all right, they got the deduction.
I'll have to take a look at that.
Points. I'll tell you afterwards. I'm not going to name names. It's doable. It's not Foggy. Foggy doesn't.
Oh no, I wanted him. I'm sorry, Nicole. Love you.
All right. Well, there's another good discussion for the admin team. The next one that I've just thought of, and I haven't put it on our little cheat sheet, that somebody suggested to me a couple of weeks ago, and I think it's because they've been watching the Porsche iRacing World Championship thingy majigamy. Reverse top 8. So you qualify, and then the top 8 get reversed. Tony and Johnny, you guys are always in the top 8. What are your thoughts on that?
I'd like that.
Weird.
It is weird, but you need to counter it. Otherwise, nobody's going to want to qualify on pole. Everyone will be trying to qualify 8th. So for me, the only way that would work is if you made big points for pole. And then you could. So in other words, if you did get pole, but you started 8th, there's got to be a benefit of getting pole. And then you would have a spiced up race because the pace would be reversed at the front. But ultimately, the fastest guy is not going to lose out because he's got his points for gaining pole. The people that are going to lose are 2nd, 3rd, 4th. But in a championship, especially like ours, where there's normally a 10th and a half between the top 4 or 5, at least, everyone's got a chance of that pole. So it would actually make it a bit more exciting if everybody did go for it. Because if you don't get it, there's a big consequence to pay.
Yeah, I don't quite know how they work it through through the admin system. But what are your thoughts, Stoke?
I'm not interested in that. I think it's too easy to try and manipulate it, actually. But I do agree with Johnny on the point of
result.
I do agree with Johnny. It doesn't happen very often. That I do think that there should be some points for the poll.
Yeah, that's interesting because both of you guys have just said, about manipulating, qualifying, whatever it was set at, so eighth. But how do you qualify eighth? Because if you've got a pace in your what I'm saying is if you've got
not be at pole, though.
Yeah, but if you've got the pace to be first, second, or third, but there's 8 cars being reversed, so you try and qualify eighth, but then somebody pips you and you're ninth, you've lost 7, 8.
You're not going to be that accurate.
You?
You'd be trying to make sure you were fifth, sixth, around there.
Yeah, I agree.
But it would get messy, and it would just look. That wouldn't be good unless there was a big reward. I mean, even for first, second, and third in qualifying, then that way you would get a true representation of what's going on. Worst case scenario, you're only going to get fourth to eighth that are messing around for position to try and get pole. But then you'd still get a good result in the race because you're trying to prevent the fast guys disappearing at the start. But you could argue we've already got that in race 2 anyway. So it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other, really. But I agree with Tony. I think either way there should be points for pole.
Even if it's just 10 points.
Yeah.
Okay, well, again, that's another thing for the admin team.
Maybe fastest lap
obviously,
as well, just as an idea.
Yep.
And most incident points.
Slowest lap. All right, guys. So the last thing is a bit of sad news. Let me just get my violin out. Just wanted to let everybody know that at present, the Sprint Series round next Saturday from VIR, we won't have a broadcast for because Stig Boozin is swanning off to some sim racing expo or something. So unless somebody jumps in and offers to broadcast it for us, unfortunately there won't be one. But we'll be back with Apex again the following week. So
Hello.
it looks like my little hint may have worked.
I shall check my schedule and see what I'm doing. It depends if I have the child or not, I suppose.
I could always help.
Yeah,
He's probably a better commentator.
Sam, thanks for everything that you're doing for the sprint races. We really appreciate the broadcasts. And the second thing is that there wouldn't be any evidence next weekend if it wasn't broadcast.
Incriminating.
You've got a point there, Tony, to be honest. Right, so just to round off the iRacing news as time's getting on, Johnny, heard anything juicy?
Touring car, TCR, that's the only thing from me at the moment. That's what we're waiting for. Which I believe is I think it's in 2 weeks or Monday week.
Yeah, I think so.
Supposedly. So that's the exciting thing for me, and Barcelona obviously should be great. And that's about it for me.
Chaz, you heard anything juicy?
No, actually, surprisingly, I'm just as excited as everyone else for the TCR. I'm not excited to see the 85,000 leagues that'll pop up from it, but it's going to be really good to get a proper touring car back on iRacing. And Catalonia, it's, in my opinion, one of the greatest circuits in the world. Very, very underrated track, and I can't wait to combine the two.
agreed. And even the versions of Catalunya, there's some good track layouts there. If they know an iRacing, they'll have each version. And
is it the school one? That's like shorter straight into a hairpin at the first corner. Yeah, that's
around. There's a few good versions of that circuit. So probably looking for.
And I suppose from a video and picture point of view, Chaz, you're creaming because it will be the latest track with all the latest goodies.
Oh yeah, it'll be absolutely stunning, and it's quite an oscillating tracks in a way. There's a lot of up and down bits, but they're very sort of gradual and smooth, and it's going to make for a lot of very pretty camera angles.
Tony, what gossip have you heard? You must have something for it.
Unfortunately, not. I'm looking forward to both the TCR car and Catalunya. The three different circuits I've seen look very interesting. I think the shortest circuit could make a fantastic super sprint weekend. Rumors persist that the V8 is still going to get a body change, so we'll see if that actually happens in week 13. Week 13 happens to coincide with when the first Gfinity super cars race is going to be broadcast in Australia. So we'll see if that comes to fruition.
Yeah, obviously that's something that we're all keeping our fingers crossed for. Just to see if we do get something new. Right, let's move on. Questions. Looks like Bill has been busy.
Bill.
So, Bill had to ask Clyde where I could find this podcast. Things just went blank. I think Bill's on about his mind. One for Chaz. What do you recommend equipment-wise to be able to stream broadcasts? What software as well? So first to Chaz, and then obviously we'll let Stig speak for a little while as well.
OBS to me is the one and only sort of streaming tool you can use. There's Streamlabs OBS or normal OBS. It's just called Open Broadcasting Software. Once you get the settings and everything right on that, it's pretty untouchable. I'm not sure.
I've done that. It's very easy. If I can do it, anyone can do it.
I'll second that.
And with even with recording videos as well, that's what I use for all my YouTube stuff. It's in terms of equipment, it's down to what your PC can run. Some people I know have really good CPUs and really good processors, and they can stream the whole thing from the CPU. My PC doesn't quite have the firepower like that, but it's got a really decent graphics card in it. So you can set it so it broadcasts and uses the graphics card to render the entire thing rather than the CPU doing it. So if you play about with the balance of that, I'd definitely say OBS. Equipment-wise, it's just down to your PC, but I don't know whether Sam will massively agree with me or disagree or what.
Yeah, totally agree with you. I use OBS, yes, to broadcast. I have big graphic card and big CPU. Just new thing I add, but yeah, OBS, it's perfect.
And to answer the second question as well, actually, Bill, in terms of tutorials, I don't actually know of any. When I started commentating for Apex, they sorted that out for me and had their own one, but I don't think it was public. I think it might have been taken down actually after OBS got updated. I'll speak to some of the guys at Apex though and see if there is still a tutorial for that, and if there is one, I'll fire it over to you at some point.
And just on the streaming part of things, I've done the odd stream, and he's probably going to hate me for saying this, but Ant Woodward got me set up, talked to me through all of the bits and pieces that I needed, links and everything, settings, all of my god-awful stupid questions that I had when I couldn't get things working. But yeah, even I managed to put a stream together. So, and is very good at that stuff. I'm sure Chaz is as well, and Sam. But yeah, and was the one that got me into it. So he's always worth a shout if you got some questions. So we got another one for Chaz, and this has come from Mr. Boozin. Do you make promotional videos? Sometimes #soon, as you do for pictures.
I do, yes. On my YouTube channel, there's a couple of trailers and things that I've done before. It can vary from anything. I mean, most of my YouTube stuff is just me messing about on different games, usually iRacing and being a clock.
Minecraft.
Yeah, I've been streaming Minecraft and even Grand Theft Auto San Andreas as of late. But yeah, I do trailers and intros for broadcasts as well. Usually it's just footage to music. If I'm honest, there's nothing incredible about it. But yeah, it is something that I do quite often.
And just from experience, Sam, obviously, if you want to book a promotional video through Chaz,
There we go.
For 2025, I would get your order in now. So that looks like the end of the questions.
Thank God.
So we'll go around the room before we close, just see if anybody else has got anything they'd like to add. So let's start with Mr. Brandon.
No, I'm good. Looking forward to forgetting the disaster that was Phillip Island for us. Moving on to next week.
Yeah, onwards and upwards, as they say. Chaz, now, obviously you haven't done much racing with us. Are you likely to make another appearance? Or are you busy making videos?
I'm always torn between this, I was doing this with the World GT Championship this year. I'm torn as to whether I want to commentate on it or race in it because I enjoy both. I've taken a bit of a step back from commentating on Apex. I've not done it for a while. I would love to race again with you guys. It's just that I've always got so much going on my weekends now, whether I've got little in or not, or whether I'm away. And yeah, I can never really nail down a weekend. So what I'm going to do in the next week or so is make sure that I've got a plan and know exactly when I can join you guys because I really, really want to do it again. These cars are immense to drive. They're so much fun. You can come out of any corner, and once you get used to how it behaves, you can just, even if it loses you a bit of time, just plant it and drift the thing out of a corner. It's just it's such a laugh. So yeah, hopefully I'll be joining you on track again soon.
If you're in between teams again of a Beast Racing, of Apex Racing, or however, like a dozen teams I see you registered for, there's always room for you at XBR, mate, if you need some help, even if it is only temporary.
And this is the community thing that we love about this series, isn't it? Love it, mate. Nice one. Cheers.
I think he's after a video.
Made it quite clear it's a waste of time trying to get one of
them. #soon, get in the queue.
Soon.
Tony, any final thoughts from you?
We've discussed a lot of things today, and I think it would be great if the members of the community would use the suggestion channel to maybe chime in on some of the things that we talked about and what their thoughts are, so that we're doing what's right for the entire league and not just for Johnny Brandon.
I am the league. What are you talking about?
Well, I'll second that from Tony. We have got a suggestion channel. Please put your suggestions in there. No, we don't we don't use all of them. Some of them we don't even take seriously, and some of them we don't even read. But every now and again, there's a corker which we implement. A lot of the stuff that people suggest to me are very, very difficult to implement from the admin side of things, so that's why they don't happen. But keep the suggestions coming, because that's what makes the league better, and it makes people feel a bit more part of the league as well when they we do something and they sit there and go, you know what, that was my idea. So Sam, as we've let you have a small speaking part tonight, anything you'd like to add before we finish?
I think I will have to wait 2025 for a video from Chaz. No, nothing else. I was not here yesterday bit sad about that, but yeah. Hope people can leave comments and suggestions for the league.
Okay, well, we're running out of time, so it just leaves me to thank our sponsors, Racetech, our two broadcasters, Apex and Esia. Thank Johnny and Tony for joining me as usual. Thanks Sam for doing the wizardry in the background, and to thank our special guest, Mr. Chaz Draycott. Mr. Chaz Draycott. Sorry, I'm as good at pronouncing names as Chaz is at making videos. So it's good night from me, and I'm sure the guys will say good night as well, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Night, everyone.
Take care.
Thanks for joining us.
Good night.
Thanks for having me, boys.